Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to be talking about 15 of the worst legendaries inside Raid Shadow Legends. Now, coincidentally, there's also 15 factions inside the game, so I figured the easiest way to do it would be just to go through and pick the worst legendary from every single faction inside the game. A lot of this is based on personal opinion, of course. At the end of the day, there's no objective way to rank legendaries or champions inside this game for that matter, because it's going to depend so much on everybody's different accounts, different gear that you have available, where you're using them, so whether it be PvE or PvP, how advanced your great halls are, all that sort of stuff, right? So essentially when you look at these tier lists and stuff like that, it is mainly subjective, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, we have the Banner Lords here first, and Lugan is actually going to be the worst legendary that I picked from this faction. There's certainly a couple of others in here that you could make the argument for, but I think this guy is pretty terrible. He has an AoE block active skills for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown with like 6 books that have to go into this at a legendary level. So 6 legendary books that have to go into this to get it to 100% land rate. He's then got an increased defense on himself and an ally protection on allies for 2 turns. Not a terrible skill. It'd be better if it was an increased defense on everybody, though. And then an A1 that just attacks one enemy. This guy is pretty lackluster, to say the least, and I do think that he is the worst legendary as far as Banner Lords go. Now, if you're interested in seeing a follow-up to this video, definitely make sure to let me know. We could do the second worst legendary from every single faction. I think that would be pretty cool. Next up, though, we have a champion that might be a little bit controversial, because for the High Elves, I think most people are going to expect me to pick probably Alexander or Incarnate, and neither of those were actually my picks. So the worst legendary that I'm going with from this faction is going to be Pixneal. Now, Pixneal, if I remember correctly, was actually a fusion back in the day, if I'm not mistaken. As you can see from her reviews, though, absolutely terrible. Now, she had the chance to be, unironically, one of the best legendaries inside the entire game for a specific area of content. So she has very solid base stats with almost 12,500 HP, or sorry, defense, almost 19k HP, and then 103 base speed for a support champion. And she had this A3 that used to attack, it was like 4 or 5 times at random, each hit having a 100% chance of placing the freeze. And then Plarium said, hey, we're going to be the savior of you guys. We're going to remove this attack 5 times at random, and we're going to replace it with an AoE. And everybody was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then like a month later, we get the announcement that Fire Knight Hard is coming out, and you actually need multi-hitting freeze champions to be able to control his turn meter. So then everybody kind of realized, hey, what the hell, Plarium? This was one of the best champions for this particular piece of content. If you happen to have her, they essentially intentionally reworked her a couple of months prior to releasing Fire Knight Hard, which was just such a scumbag move, in all honesty, because she went from a potential god tier champion and potentially being able to essentially just control that turn meter herself alone, right, with like a 4 or 5 times hitter on a freeze, to now just being a very mediocre champion where pretty much everybody else can do what she does, right? Like, she's not very special in any way. So super, super disappointing. She's like an absolutely badass looking champion as well. So it's such a shame to see her not really have a use case right now. Sacred Order is a bit of an interesting one. For Sacred Order, though, I went with Supreme Aethel. Ellen DeGeneres here is a little disappointing, to say the least, right? So she has an increased attack, crit rate, shield, and increased accuracy on herself, then an extra turn, which seems pretty good, but she has an AoE, attacks all enemies, 100% chance of placing a freeze, will ignore strength and ally protection and unkillable, right? It seems good on paper. She has very solid base attack, almost 1600, some of the highest base attack in the game. A1 attacks one enemy if they're under a freeze. If there's anybody under a freeze, also attacks them. The problem is she is a solution in search of a problem, essentially, right? Like, any sort of a freeze champion, you have better options out there, even at an epic level, right? You have AoE freezes on epic champions now. You have AoE freezes on somebody like a ninja, who brings a lot more damage in his kit, because even though she has incredibly high base HP, or attack rather, she just does not hit hard, and she is a void legendary champion, people. So not only are you pulling void shards for her, you're then also needing to put legendary books into her for a kit that is only good really on paper and not necessarily in practice. That being said, though, she looks absolutely fantastic, but definitely a bit disappointing. Now, Barbarians, again, This might be a bit of a controversial pick, but I think a lot of people will probably actually agree with me. And I think most folks would expect me to pick Alsgore maybe for some areas, though he is a pretty decent champion, in my opinion at least, and I think the reviews do reflect that, but I do see some negativity going around online about him for one reason or another. Elder Skarg is also debatably a pretty questionable champion, right? There's other weird niche ones like Altan that don't really get a whole lot of use or anything, but I'm actually picking Cronam the Barbarian. And the reason for that, as you can see, this guy has pretty decent ratings in like 2 areas of the game, but this guy is locked behind getting 3 referral accounts to level 50 to unlock the second stage where you have to get 3 more referral accounts to level 50. So it's such an incredible grind to make this happen. And you either need friends or colleagues that are willing to do this, or just pay somebody online to do it for you, right? And then at the end of the day, his kit just isn't that good. So he has an AoE, chance of placing an HP burn. That's great. We have Artak that does the same thing. We have Mordecai at an epic level that does the same thing, right? He's not special. A2, 3-time at random, chance of instantly activating HP burn. Okay, we have Ninja, does the exact same thing. We have Artak, AoE, does the same exact thing, right? No randomness. And in an A1, that's just kind of a whole lot of BS, right? Like, it's such a disappointing kit for a champion that is so hard to get, in my opinion. And I think he's been significantly power crept since he was introduced to the game, because when he first came out, there was actually some potential use cases for him, but not anymore, sadly. So we're moving on to Ogren Tribes. Now, you could very easily make the case that, you know, any of these champions are essentially the worst legendary in the game, with a couple of exceptions, right? Like Gurgo and Grazer are both pretty good champions. There is a lot to pick from in this list, but I'm going to go with Gerta Bogbrew. Gerta has terrible reviews. She deserves them. She does some poisons, right? One of her big problems is you want her to have no accuracy on the A2, because she's going to have a chance of placing poisons on everybody without a weaken, which she tries to place first. So you don't want the accuracy so that the weaken lands, you want the poisons. But then on her A3, she has a chance of landing poisons, which require accuracy to be placed. So her A2 is countering her A3 and how you want to build her, so she's just incredibly not useful, right? The only niche situation that you could potentially get some use from is her passive, where she can do some turn meter reduction, but this fine-looking young lady is definitely a pretty terrible legendary. And what makes her even worse, she's a free login champion, right? So a lot of newer players, a lot of players that might not be so experienced, right? Not necessarily newer players, because it's going to be a couple of years by the time you get her, but people who might not understand the game as much, they may be tempted to invest books into her, right? And especially for a low spend or a free-to-play player, that could be a crucial mistake on your account, because she is just not worth it. So inside Lizardman, we have a pretty easy pick, in all honesty. It's going to be Rosin Scarhide. Rosin is the permanent fusion that we have inside the game. He has an AoE turn meter depletion on a 6-turn cooldown as an affinity champion. This is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. We have our Mons doing an AoE turn meter steal on, what, a 3-turn cooldown? This is insane. 91 base speed, pretty terrible. 1 target hit with a weaken and decreased defense. 3-time hitter A1, chance of removing a buff. This guy's absolutely horrendous. Even for a permanent fusion champion that everybody can get, this guy is just woefully terrible. Like, it is laughable how bad this guy is. And I don't really think anyone else inside the faction even comes close. Just that simple. Vergamkar is kind of a solution in search of a problem, like I mentioned. Basatha is definitely not that good either. But I think Rosin definitely takes the cake there. And that's not a cake that you want to have, by the way. Skinwalkers. Very easy pick, in my opinion. You could argue that it'd be one of 2 champions, maybe one of 3. So I think the 3 contenders here would be Norog, Warchief, and Brachus for the worst legendary inside the faction. The rest of these champions definitely have use cases, and they're definitely pretty decent. I went with Norog. Norog is absolutely horrific. As you can see, his best part of his skill is he has an AoE block buffs, but it's on a 3-turn cooldown for a legendary champion. You have Ugo that does the same thing with a decreased defense at a epic level. This guy has a worse kit than an epic, as simple as that. He is absolutely terrible, right, for a Skinwalker. Now, Orcs, you could once again make the debate that any of these champions is the worst champion from the faction, with very few exceptions, because almost, like, Orcs are just struggling for good legendary champions at the end of the day. Like, all of these are just so questionable, right? Apart from, like, maybe Artak, Varl has some good use cases. We're talking like obviously Warlord is a classic good one. Supreme Gaelic is one of the better legendaries in the entire game, right? Bells is pretty decent. The Unity Champion is pretty good. Like there's some decent options here, but then you're very quickly offset by like Khan and Grohawk and Nogdar in most cases. Like he has some niche use in certain areas, but he's pretty terrible otherwise. Gomlock is absolutely fucking horrendous, right? Jag is not that good either, in my opinion. Robar is who I picked, though. So Robar, A1, 50% chance of placing a stun, extra turn if it's placed. That's pretty cool. AoE, 100% chance of placing a decreased defense on a legendary champion. We just need something a little bit better these days. A3, AoE, damage increases if they're under any sort of CC abilities. It's a kit that's in disarray, right? Like he's bringing defense break. That's great. I mean, I think even at a epic level, we have a defense break inside this faction with Sargala, right? One of my favorite epics in the game. You don't need Robar, right? Like he's not very useful in 99% of content within inside the game. And I'm sure with some of these champions, there's going to be people down in the comments saying, well, my Robar is doing like 7 billion inside Hydra. And, I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of these champions, it's going to be a case of you could throw anybody in that situation that has a similar kit, and they're going to do just as good, if not better, even in an epic level champion. So, you know, he's not good at all. And he was very much tied with some of the other champions inside this faction for the worst champion, but I had to go with him. Inside Demon Spawn, we have another interesting one. So we have Vassel, who I do believe is actually a Doom Tower reward. This guy is an HP-based champion, right? So he has damage based on HP. He has some damage in his kit. He has an HP equalization. He doesn't really do anything special. So if 2 or more Demon Spawn champions on the team alongside this champion increases the crit damage of everybody by 20%. That damage increase only works when he's alive. So, you know, you think about it, that'd be nice to have on maybe like a Heffrack or an Anethwy or something, but you're not running generally a entirely Demon Spawn champion unless you're using him inside like Faction Wars. And then even inside Faction Wars, with everything he does, you're just simply better off bringing some of these epic options. So if you're looking for damage, you're bringing a Magnar, right? If you're looking for support when it comes to like healing and stuff like that, you're bringing a Dur the Hungerer, right? Hell, bring an Infernal Baroness. There you go. Better option. Abyssal. Like, there's so many better options inside this faction that he's just not really that good at all. You could also definitely make an argument that Scorid is up there as one of the worst as well, because really his only use case is going to be Hydra. That's kind of what he specializes in. Hydra and maybe like Hard Spider or something like that. But I think he is an S tier champion compared to Vassel specifically. And yeah, it's crazy how bad some of the Doom Tower champions are, that's for sure. Inside the Undead Hordes, we have what I think should be a pretty obvious pick. There's definitely a few in here, though, that you could argue might fall into this category. But Elgias is going to be the champion that I pick. And as you can see from his reviews, people hate him. He has an AoE buff removal, decreased turn meter, decrease their turn meter further by each removed buff. Attacks one enemy, putting their skills on cooldown, right? Also places the block buffs, and then weirdly, if the enemy team has any duplicates of the target champion, also puts their skills on cooldown. Like, this is so weird because it's an attack one enemy, so you're just countered by UDK, simple as that, right? Nobody's going to be running 2 UDKs inside the team. And inside, like, Live Arena, especially once you get to the gold level, you can't even run duplicate champions, so it doesn't matter, right? Like, you're not going to have those duplicate champions. Generally, even in Classic Arena, you're not really going to see duplicate champions. You could really only get use out of this guy if you're doing, like, some PvE content. But we now have, like, you know, Fabian that everybody has. We have our Mons that's just strictly a better CC champion. We have Basher that does this guy's job but better because he's not affinity-based and he's an AoE increased cooldown. Right? Like, it's insane how power crept Elgias has been. Granted, even at the time that he was released, he wasn't that good. And what's super disappointing about him is I actually have been lucky enough to pull 2 of him, I believe. I did end up trading one in for the tokens, at the token trader to get Molly Tankard, which is something that I probably regret, but I was looking for a provoke champion inside Hydra, so that's what I did. But we're moving on to Dark Elves. Now, once again, there's a lot of champions inside this faction that you could make the argument for. So one of the ones at the top of the list is going to be Blind Seer. She is absolutely horrific. We have somebody like a Supreme Kale that is just, you know, not that good for a Void Legendary champion. Truoth, I don't actually even know anything about him. I haven't looked at him in a long time. There's a lot of options here, but who I'm going with is Chromax Moonblood. This guy has an AoE 100% chance of a provoke on a 4-turn cooldown, people. On a Force Affinity champion with a decreased accuracy. This is insane. This is so bad. A2 attacks one enemy. 100% chance of placing a block buffs. Also fills his turn meter by 30%. A single target block buffs on a legendary champion. Once again, we have a epic in the way of Ugo rather, that can do it. We have Uko that can do it on an AoE. This guy is so terrible. It's laughable. Undead Hordes, we have an interesting one. There is actually not really too many terrible champions inside the Undead Hordes, which is pretty cool. But there are certainly a few that you could make an argument for, like Bystophis is definitely up there. Shemnath in today's meta, when it comes to PvP at least, is pretty mediocre. You could make the argument for, I don't know, Whirlum Frostking. I still think he's pretty terrible. Even after the buff, I don't think he's that good in all honesty. Fortis is who I picked though, and he's actually the champion from the thumbnail as well. So this guy is absolutely horrific. He has this hidden skill that it's an AoE, will ignore 30% of their defense under targets with fear or true fear. It will always be critical against targets with fear or true fear. The problem with this is you can't place fear or true fear on something like Hydra. You can't place it through Stone Skin or block buffs or Pharaoh or, you know, anything like that, right? So it's very, very situational. You could definitely run him with like a Fabian inside the arena, which is a video I might do at some point. But then again, the question is, do you really want to use your books on this guy? Do you really want to waste your resources leveling this guy up to try and run him with a Fabian for a chance of maybe getting a decent hit? Because the rest of his skills just don't hit at all. So, you know, that's kind of the question. And it's one of those things too. This skill has a 40% chance to be unlocked for 1 turn whenever a fear or true fear debuff, is placed on an enemy. So if you're using like a Fabian, there's the chance that he can, you know, place that or unlock this every time Fabian places his true fear, which is pretty strong. But again, it's a lot of RNG, and it's only unlocked for 1 turn. So if he's stunned or slept or something like that, not stunned actually, stunned would keep it unlocked, but if he's slept or provoked, you're then going to have to wait for that RNG to proc again. So overall, just a very painfully mediocre kit at the end of the day. Inside the dwarves, we have a few options. So obviously Gronjar is a very strong contender for this, right? The man with the very large sword who places an AoE HP burn on a 4-turn cooldown. But we're going with Nari. Nari is an absolutely terrible champion who is actually a part of like a lot of marketing material for Raid, which is kind of surprising. A1, chance of stealing a buff. A2, plays a decreased resistance and a decreased accuracy. It's whatever, right? A3 has a 100% chance of placing a provoke and also places a counterattack on him for 2 turns. And this is going to be on a 4-turn cooldown, right? Once again, this is an affinity champion with a provoke on a 4-turn cooldown. We have better options than this these days. He does have very solid base stats, right? Especially for a defensive base damage dealer, but he's just not really that good in my opinion. So the reviews certainly agree with that as well. I don't think he's strong at all. We have Noble coming in next. Now, Noble is actually a fantastic champion for one particular reason, and that is that he serves as the empowerment material for your ninja. So apart from that though, just a very mediocre kit, right? They've tried buffing him a couple of times already, I believe. I'm pretty sure he's actually inside a token trader as well, which is insane, but this guy is just absolutely terrible. You could also make the case that Jinro is certainly up here as well, one of the demon, the Doom Tower hard. I cannot talk apparently. The Doom Tower hard champions that you unlock, he's also pretty terrible. Lastly, we are moving on to the Sylvan Watchers, and we have what is going to be maybe a controversial pick, but I think a lot of people will probably also agree with me, and that is going to be Cersa the Charred. Now, as you can see, based on the fact that she has 83 reviews, not many people have her because she is actually the most pay-to-win champion inside the entire game. When you come over to the Plarium Points program, when you spend way too much money inside the game, you collect all her fragments, and then you can summon her. But she is an absolutely horrific champion. She has an AoE decreased speed, right? Also has a 100% chance placing a Hex on a 4-turn cooldown. AoE HP burn with 4 books required into it for it to be a 100% chance. And then just, you know, a whatever BS A1. I think, and this might be controversial, if you're going to make a pay-to-win champion, make them pay to win, right? Like, just lean into it at this point, because we know that Raid is a gacha game. We know that there's a lot of spending to progress inside the game. You're not going to have free-to-play players competing at the highest level of PvP. It's just that simple, right? That's how it is. You spend money on the game, your account gets better, you beat more players. That's how this game works. So make it, like, honestly, make it so that she doesn't require books. Just make it so that her kit exists like this, decent cooldowns, no books required. That simple, right? Nobody's going to get her after spending thousands of dollars and be like, yippee, I get to book this champion who's terrible, right? And the reviews really reflect that. We have better champions in almost every area of content that she could be used. Furthermore, this is a champion that you're not going to see in PvP fights. Now, Raid have very much made some ridiculously broken champions for PvP that they made as pay-to-win champions. So, for example, Xena, who was out for quite a while and a meta changer for a little bit of time. And then also, of course, He-Man, who is ridiculous in PvP with his Ignore Stone Skin abilities, as well as his, like, AoE that buffs up as he receives buffs, right, and gets stronger. Those were both accessibly purchasable PvP-focused champions that were just absolutely insane. Make Cersa a ridiculously broken champion for PvE. That's all that's being said, right? Because she's not going to win you Hydra placements, right? She's just an AoE burn champion. So make her have decent cooldowns so you can use her in, like, spiders or wave clearing content. Maybe make her have an AoE HP burn as well as, like, an instant detonation or something like that. And then require no books, right? Simple as that. And she'd be a fantastic champion. And when you're spending that level of money on the game, you expect to get some sort of a reward for it, which is just not the case currently. I have 40 of the fragments so far, and I'm actually kind of ashamed that it's that high, to be honest, but it is what it is. That being said, though, if there's anybody on this list that you think I left out, if there's anybody on this list that you think shouldn't be there, definitely let me know down in the comments. And of course, if you want to see a part 2 of this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below letting me know that you enjoyed it as well. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.